Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. My name is Brooke Brigham. I'm the attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham. I'm the therapist.
And today we're here to talk about a documentary called Child Star. This is currently playing on Hulu, and it was produced and directed by Demi Lovato. And so she, of course, started as a child star in Hollywood on the Disney Channel. And so a lot of this is about her experience, but then she brings in other people. She brings in other Disney people that she worked with, Nickelodeon people, child star. You will know all of these people.
Yeah.
And then she also brings in Drew Barrymore and Christina Ricci, who were also child stars of a different era. And that was very interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting.
It really was. This is actually a really interesting documentary and, very eye-opening because, we all know the horror stories of, things that happen to child actors, but there are some people who survive. Demi Lovato, I was surprised. I went and I looked at her Wikipedia. She's way more accomplished than I think people understand. She's sold over 40 million albums. She has a lot of albums. Between 15 and 20 albums. She's, toured. She's, acted. She's very much a philanthropist, and she's gotten political lately. We'll get to. She worked with Governor Gavin Newsom to get some new laws passed in California to help protect children who are on social media. So she's really quite something, and all the while she's had to deal with a lot of shit.
Yeah.
It was not easy.
What was interesting too, this kind of happens a little bit later, but we hear a little bit about this from Christina Ricci and her own experiences. But it was interesting hearing Drew Barrymore and Christina Ricci, people that we grew up with, and sort of what their experience is like pre-internet, pre-social media. And then, it didn't really occur to me how the creation of cable television, which then went into creating Nickelodeon, then the Disney Channel, there was a lot more entertainment for kids. And so therefore there was a need for a lot more young people to be, entertainers in a different way than the way in which I think we experienced it, because they made a really good point, which is, how do you break as a child actor? Well, one is that you being a child, you get on a show, get into a movie or a TV show that's iconic, you know, like an Oscar-winning performance in a movie or a show that captures everybody. But other than that, there's no other way. But now you can be a brand. You can, you know, and also what they were looking for, it became almost even that just acting wasn't enough. You got to act, you got to dance, you got to sing, you got to make movies, you got to make TV, you got to make albums, like just more and more and more things to do.
Yeah. And you have to sell merchandise.
Yes. And
it's all about the merchandise. And as someone who, my daughter grew up in the, not so much, she mostly was a Disney Channel kid, but she did watch some of the Nickelodeon shows. But the amount of merchandise that has passed through this house is
she loved Miley Cyrus and Hannah
the tens
Montana.
of thousands of dollars. I mean, High School Musical, Hannah Montana. She did like, Demi Lovato, Camp Rock, the Jonas Brothers, all this stuff. And we have all the merchandise. And that is huge. And that's, because you're right, the need for all these child actors, because before cable, there was only a few channels. I mean, we had the Brady Bunch. Okay. We had, Little House on the Prairie had some child actors. You
would have a show like Good Times where two of the, maybe two were underage and one was older, or I mean, there was a lot of that. So there was usually one kid or two kids, but this was all kids, just all kids. I'm really surprised that this documentary didn't get more attention and love, because I thought, I agree with you that I thought it was very, very well done. And I liked how she kind of broke everything up, where she talks about the dream. And then there's and talking about this dream and where she was coming from growing up in Texas, and, seeing her being with her great grandparents and watching Shirley Temple and seeing how amazing and wonderful that looked. And then her creating this dream of, I want to be a star. I want to be huge.
Well, let me stop you here, because here's where I'm wondering what role her mom played in this. Because her mom was a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader?
No, I didn't know that.
So now that is kind of like not a child star, but they're almost children, they're like late teens, early 20s. That's a whole thing. And so she took her girls. So it was, and then, so Demi was, wanted, I think the kids did want to get into it, but it's always a combination of the right kid and the right parent. Because if you don't have the right parent driving you and helping you and doing, it's not going to happen. Yeah. And she said, you don't get hired unless they like you and your mom, because they don't want to deal with some crazy mom. So Demi's, was it older or younger sister? Younger, who was cast on the
Desperate
Housewives as a overweight child, playing an overweight child. And the storyline was that she was an overweight child. And I'm like, I wouldn't let my child do that. It seemed weird to me. And the mom, I kind of got like a weird feeling from the mom. So I wonder if things might have been different if she were born to a different mother.
I don't know. I didn't know that about the cheerleading. That's a good question. I know. I got the sense that very much that this was what Demi wanted. But, again, I think that some of it is what you're exposed to and what feels possible. So that's the other thing too, is that if, like anything else in life, right, where you going to law school didn't feel scary or different because you had seen it, our father had gone and we heard stories about it. I think that sometimes, maybe if it was a different kid and who wanted to be a star and the parent was was a lawyer or something and working all the time and doing all this stuff, would be like, well, no, we're not going to go on auditions. Like, be on your high school chorus. Or like, audition for the school plays or be in the chorus or here's, but maybe the fact that the mom had already been exposed on that level. Maybe that did propel her. I definitely think that once Demi started and she was working, I think then it gets a lot easier for the younger kids. If one of the younger kids, what's her name's Madison, I think Madison de la Garza.
Yeah, de la something that, and that's her. Demi's father, I think,
they have different dads, right?
do they have different dads?
Oh.
She has one sister with the same dad, and then there's another. But yeah, and she has kind of a complicated relationship with her dad. But so yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like the mother moved the family to LA from Texas.
Well, she got the gig
to LA. But
they didn't want to.
Not all parents would do that. You know? So yeah, you definitely have to have the right parent behind you who's willing to do all of this stuff. So we also, some of the other, we meet, we know Kenan Thompson from SNL, who he was on, what was it called?
Kenan.
Good?
It's all good. It was like Kenan and Kel, that movie that they were referring to as Good Burger. And that's like a very well-known. So this is one thing that's different because we are older. A lot of these, like Kenan Thompson, like a lot of these people I kind of sort of knew, but if Kenan wasn't on SNL, I don't know if I would really know much about him.
I wasn't watching this.
Like I've never watched an episode of Sunny with the Chance. Like the same thing with when I see someone like Selena Gomez, like who is a billionaire, by the way, but until she was
Wizards of Waverly Place.
Yeah, I didn't watch that show. I didn't know any of these shows that she was on. You know, I didn't even know that she had this beauty line. You know, the fact, like, honestly, I knew who she was because of Justin Bieber and some of these other things, like, because she was just famous. But I think that's one thing is depending on your age. And I thought that was really interesting about that whole Disney time was that there are people out there who absolutely have every single one, like knows that Demi Lovato is a huge recording artist and has all of her music and all of her songs, but that was just never exposed to us. And I think that's the other part about like child stars and kids that's so hard is I do think that in some ways it's very special because it captures sort of a time, but it also just captures a time. And once you get to be a certain age, right, like that, people feel nostalgic towards you, but it's not the same. And I think it's really hard when you potentially achieve your biggest achievements before you're 25.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
You know, and very few people make it beyond that. I mean, we're focusing on the people who did, but go back and look at all of these shows. I mean, I was surprised to learn Nickelodeon was around before Disney. And Nickelodeon was sort of the anti-Disney. Like it was more than, because I didn't like those shows. And when Layla would watch stuff on Nickelodeon, I'm like, these people are so mean to each other. They talk really badly to each other. I mean, they do on Disney too, but Nickelodeon was more like, you know, in your face. We're sort of the anti-Disney, whatever. And then the Disney Channel came after. I mean, it was just there was so many shows. As I'm watching this, I'm like, oh yeah. Cause I was hearing all this in the background while I'm making dinner and she's watching TV, but I know all these shows and I'm like, oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it was a lot. I mean, these were huge productions with a huge number of children. And
a lot of pressure. And if you're the star, if you're the one, it's hard enough being the star of a TV show when you're 45.
Yeah.
Because I've known those people. It's hard enough to be that person, but it is, you know, can you imagine being 15, 14, going through puberty and being the star of a show and all these people's livelihoods are connected to you.
And also being the breadwinner of your family. Because they also interviewed Raven Simone from The Cosby Show, who started working at 16 months old. And she said her family always made it clear to her that this is a job. You take this seriously. You work hard. And she knew it was a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old. She was supporting her family.
Well, but did you notice what she said? She said, well, because when Demi asked her about being the breadwinner, and she said, well, actually, no, my family always called it the family business, that everybody had a role. But then she kind of, she doesn't say it, but basically what she's saying between the lines is, but I was the actual one doing the work.
She was the commodity. Her father may have been her manager. And that's another thing. We'll talk more about, you know, the financial part of it. But yeah, what happens is the parents come in and they become their managers, and they take a huge percentage. Is there a maximum percentage?
There's not a
manager
maximum that a manager can take, but most managers, you take anywhere 10%, 15%. Those are the standards.
Okay. Yeah. So then the parents get a cut of that. And then, if there's an agent, that's another
10%.
10%.
They can't take more than that.
And then these Coogan laws that are supposed to protect the child actors, it only gives them 15%.
Yeah, and
That's
I thought
nothing.
it was in every state. I thought the Coogan Fair, was in every state. So first they talked to us, got a little history here that we learned in 1938. There was the Fair Labor Act, which is when they started to regulate for everyone across the board, wages, hours, workplace laws.
For child labor.
And part of that was child labor, except for actors. That was the one.
Child actors and entertainers were excluded.
Because they didn't anticipate that this would become a big issue. And it wasn't until Jackie Coogan came around and his parents that's the story, right? His parents took all his money.
He was a child actor in the 30s, and they say that he made like $4 million in his career in the 1930s, which today would be, God, I don't know how much. But, and when he turned 18, there was nothing.
Yeah.
He had nothing.
Yeah.
So they passed that law, but it only requires you to set aside 15%. And I'm sorry, I think that's like way too low.
Yeah.
15%?
Probably is. Yeah. But what happens, and I think this was so interesting, was, what happens then is, and Demi first started talking about this, she said, she didn't realize that becoming a star, how it would have such a negative impact on our mental health. But she said immediately it was my success equals my self-worth. And that became, and you can understand that, the audition process and are you getting gigs or not getting gigs, and how, seeking external validation, which we all do, is such a hard, it's so hard to go through that. It's hard enough. I started my own business when I was 41, and it was hard enough on my ego, rejection and some of these other things like, oh no, I don't want to work with you, or, oh no, you didn't get this gig, or, oh, this or that. Like that's hard enough on your ego. But imagine being 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, and just how much that's connected. And then the other thing I thought was so interesting was Christina Ricci, which I didn't really know that much about her.
Yeah.
She talked about how she was so unhappy. She was so bored. She was getting into trouble by the time she was age 7. And that being on sets were like an escape. It was stability.
She said that she said her father was a failed cult leader.
Yeah.
And that he was physically violent and her home life was chaotic. So she got to leave and just travel around and be with her mom. And she loved that.
Yeah.
And then also, both she and Demi said that when they started getting a little bit of fame, they were bullied out of school. Like Demi's talking about that there was a suicide petition.
That I could not believe.
At her school that people were signing.
That is the worst thing I've ever heard. I've never heard of that. I'm sure it happens all the time, but I'm just saying that that is unreal.
Yeah, kids at her school are passing around this petition signing it saying she should commit suicide. So she had to leave school, and Christina Ricci left school. I mean, this is some next level trauma.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Christina Ricci did talk a lot about, she was drinking very young and using drugs and this and that. And so was Demi Lovato. Demi Lovato had, I think, more complicated struggles with it, almost died, overdosed. And it's been ongoing, her whole life.
Yeah. Well, and Drew Barrymore talks about this too, of just, working on E.T. and having Steven Spielberg in her life and just having a father figure, of having
he was
someone,
her godfather.
Yeah. Someone who had boundaries with her, someone who she's like, I had no authority in my life. There were no boundaries. Her father, I don't know much about her father, but I mean, I guess he was just incredible, a drug addict and toxic. And the mom, he
was kooky too.
She was kooky too. And that I can't imagine this is the other thing these kids is if you really take a step back and go, you know, here they are, they have their home life that is difficult and stressful. And so you're trying to escape that to get on these movie sets where you're treated really, really well and treated in a certain way because you're quote unquote the star. And then you know, but you can't really talk about your home life on the set, but you can't talk about your set life to your friends and your, do you know what I mean? You can't talk about your home life to that. And it's just this, the compartmentalizing of constantly having to kind of like, okay, in this situation, I need to be like this. In this situation, I can talk about these things, or this is who I am here. And I thought that was so interesting because to hear how, because being an actor itself requires you a certain amount of vulnerability, a certain amount of opening yourself up. And Drew Barrymore talks about that too, of thinking that that's what she was supposed, you know, I'm supposed to open myself up and be open to everything.
She thought it was, well, I think, and she thought it was required again, because she's a commodity. You know, these children are commodities. And, you know, it was so disgusting. They showed that clip of Drew on SNL. When she hosted SNL, you know, like
at
8-year-old. Yeah. And they're doing some skit and her line is, I'm a Barrymore. Give me a drink and make it a double.
Yeah.
I mean, who in their right mind allowed this? And you see like Julia
it's the 80s.
Dreyfus. It was the 80s.
It was the 80s.
I just saw Julia Louis-Dreyfus right next to her. There were all that 80s cast, those people. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like child abuse.
Yeah.
Like, would that ever happen today? No.
Well, and the Drew Barrymore stuff, when that was so shocking and so, when all of it came out about her, about smoking pot at 10, cocaine at 13. I mean, I remember being in high school, because I think Drew Barrymore is like a year or two younger than I am, and being in high school and seeing that People magazine, Little Girl Lost. And seeing that, and she was at that moment in time a little bit of this poster child of the, you know, the child star that like flamed out and burned out and all of these things. And it's amazing to see her today, like how far she's
a goddamn miracle.
She is.
Because listen to this. Okay, so she's 49. She went to rehab at 13. She talks in the documentary about smoking pot with her
10.
Friend and her daughter. At 10. Rehab at 13. She was a regular at Studio 54. She's hanging out with adults. She spent 18 months in a mental institution where her mom put her there because she was doing drugs. She was emancipated at 14, attempted suicide at 14, went back to rehab. And by 15, she was, you know, emancipated, had her own apartment. I mean, by 15, this is your life. And this woman today is very successful. And she too, if you look at the catalog, she's made a shit ton of movies.
She's made a shit ton of
dozens and dozens of movies.
Well, and you have to give Drew Barrymore a little bit of credit here, because not only did she manage to kind of claw her way out of this, I mean, she was doing B films.
Yeah.
You know, she was doing crappy B films for a long time until she could claw her way out. And you have to give her a lot of credit because she was someone who did a lot of supporting roles. She, you know, showed up a lot. And the other thing that she did that I don't know how many other women were doing, but it's, you know, with Reese Witherspoon and all these other women are doing it now, is Drew Barrymore very early on was like, you know, I'm going to produce my own stuff. Like she started that Flower Films pretty early. You know, she started it in the late 90s, early aughts. So, and we've seen so many women behind her kind of, you know, oh, wait, I can produce my own stuff, get my own books, you know, oh, okay, great. Yeah. So, I thought that's really interesting too. And we hear this from Christina Ricci when she talked about, because her first big movie was Mermaids with Cher. And that's the other part that I think is so interesting is like, if you look at Drew Barrymore with someone like Steven Spielberg or Christina Ricci with someone like Cher, you know, how pivotal having certain people at these times, how important that is, because it sounds like Cher really influenced Christina Ricci in terms of how she sees things, you know, seeing how strong Cher was, seeing how, it sounds like Cher took an interest in her. And listen, Cher knows, You know,
Mhm.
by the time she got to Mermaid, she knows she was speaking up for herself. And I thought that was really interesting too, because one thing is when they talk about you can't be a pain in the ass, that I know this just from working in the industry is so many people want these jobs. So many people want this, that people, you know, you really can't be a pain in the ass too
Mhm.
much. You cannot be, because if you are a pain, if you are someone that pushes you, guess what? Agents will get annoyed by you. Agents will be like, well, I'm not going to submit them because they're such a pain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not even
Yeah.
going to bother with them. I'm not going to
Makes
do that. So it
sense.
sort of creates this idea very, very early on where if you complain, if you negotiate, if you push back in any way, shape, or form, you will lose. And that also is very, very true.
Yeah,
So-
and all of the people interviewed in this documentary kind of said the same thing along the lines of the motivation for wanting to perform and wanting to do this was they were looking for the love and affection of
Mhm.
their parents, the people, the public,
Mhm.
whoever. They were, you know, of course, if there's all this, you know, you're going to gravitate towards adulation. You know, it's
Mhm.
like it's kind of a natural instinct, and it is.
Yeah.
It's
And
like
your
a
parents'
drug.
approval.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a drug. They talk about it being, you know, fame and
Mhm.
all this being addicting.
Yeah.
And, you know, being like a drug, and
Yeah, because it feels good. And each time you get some, you need a little bit more and a little bit more
Mhm.
and a little bit and a little bit more, for sure. And the other thing too is if you think about artists, people who want to perform, people who
Mhm.
you know are can act, they are a little quirky. They
Yeah,
are like every celebrity. What do we hear from them? Oh, no one liked me in high school. Or, oh, I was the one. Like the girl that's the popular girl in high school. She's not thinking about getting on Nickelodeon or anything.
no, she's not going to go out on a limb, and
She's
you know,
living her best
life is
life.
great. Yeah,
Yeah. So life is good. So yeah, you get a combination of these kids who not only are maybe a little quirky themselves and don't fit into the norm, but then on top of that, there's some sort of family dynamic or something that's happening that's also making it, you know, difficult. And, you know, you also have to have a certain level of maturity and a certain level, you know,
Mhm.
I do think that if you're a kid who's, you know, got all this time and attention from your parents, I don't know if you're really seeking more time and attention from other people, or
Mhm.
do you know what I mean? That's the other part of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you have to have maturity. You have to have a very strong work ethic. You have to want to do this. This is
Mhm.
extremely hard work. But you know, then there's
You get it.
you get it, and then it's like, okay, now what? And there's all the downsides. And
Mhm.
you know, the thing about fame is like, it's always like, okay, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You did this, and now what are you going to do?
Well, and also what she's talking about, that not being able to get off the train. She's talking about working nonstop every single day. Demi
Mhm.
Lovato is talking about this. And so that's the part that's really tricky is that so much of this is you work so hard you go through all of this to get to this place, and then you're there, and now you finally are getting opportunities. And how do you say no? How do
Mhm.
you say no to these opportunities? How do you push back? And I'm sure all these people are saying, well, you got to strike while the iron's hot. You know, you may not get these. Come on, we have to keep rolling along. And then what happens is then, you know, now you've got the Demi Lovato situation where you're going from a movie to touring to album to movie to TV show to this to that over and over again. When I was in LA, this was like the late 90s. So these were the years of like Dawson's Creek and all of those teen movies and
Felicity.
And we represented Kerry Russell, and we represented a lot of those Disney. We had like 4 of them. People who were on the Mickey Mouse Club with Britney and all of that. And, you know, this is a good example. Like Kerry Russell, for example, there was a lot of pressure after that first year of Felicity for her to do a movie in that summer, the movie in the summer, you know, and that was a big thing. Katie Holmes, they really worked her hard. She did like 4 movies in a short amount of time, and Dawson's Creek. So, but that was the thing. It was like, oh, we're TV stars, so we each need to do a movie this summer. We have to. And James Vanderbeek represented him. Like he felt this great need to do a movie. Like everyone felt this need. And I remember Kerry Russell didn't, because you know, for her, she was the star of that show. She worked 16, 17 hours a day. She worked constantly. And that was the thing is that I think this is why we see Kerry Russell as such a sane person today who just got not, she didn't win a Golden Globe, but she was just nominated for another Golden Globe. She is a Golden Globe winner for Felicity. And, but I think that she is a together person today because she was just like, no, I'm going to take a break.
Yeah.
But people were, I felt for her. I really, really felt for her because there was so much pressure on her and she was 23. You know, she wasn't that old, but she had been working again for 15 years.
Right.
At that point, you know? So anyway, it's just, it's hindsight's 2020, but you can see very clearly how Demi Lovato and so many of these other people got to this point and didn't kind of know how to get off the roller coaster. And it wasn't until she, you know, something horrendous happened that she finally got a break. She had to punch a backup dancer. You know, she didn't want to. She didn't mean to. She obviously feels a tremendous amount of shame and sadness around it. But in some ways, you're kind of like, okay, you know, kind of like, how do I stop this?
It's almost like, she manifested something that would force her to be able to take a break. She and Christina both talked to me about the drugs. Like Christina said, she felt she had no control over her life, but this drugs and alcohol she could control.
Yep. It's the same thing with eating disorders.
Exactly. Which they both, I think, well, Demi for sure, both said they had. And Demi said, if I'm going to work like an adult, I'm going to party like an adult. You know, so she's rebelling against all of this.
Well, and also she wanted to escape, but she couldn't escape. Like she couldn't go take a break. She couldn't leave the room. So I'll drink. And now I've escaped.
Right.
You know, that's the other part of it too.
Psych Legal Pop will be right back after these messages.
Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, you know, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
I thought the stuff with her, we see it to me with one of her friends, this woman, was her first name Allison Stoner.
Oh, yeah. Allison
who was
Stoner.
also on the Camp Rock. Her face looked very familiar. You know, she was on all of those Cheaper by the Dozen movies with Steve Martin. I think I saw the first one, so that's why I know her. But I was surprised to hear that she also had an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And you know, sort of what that was like for her. And then they talk about the relationship and what happened in between Camp Rock 1 and Camp Rock 2, which is Demi like blew up huge. So suddenly she's not staying. You know, the first movie felt like summer camp, you know, because everyone's together, everyone's having fun, everyone's dating each other. But then by the second movie, she's staying at the Four Seasons and she's being micromanaged, you know, and she's basically probably surrounded by people going, nope. And she, what did she say? She said, I traded connection. Success was traded for connection. Like I now had success, but I don't have any connections anymore. And
it's very isolating.
Very, very isolating. I'm trying to see. We do see a little thing. I don't know why Christopher Columbus was interviewed. He's a director, and he was talked a little bit about Macaulay Culkin. Yeah, he did the Harry Potter. He also did Home Alone. He was talking about Macaulay Culkin, but I didn't quite. Maybe I misunderstood. Was he saying something about like that he felt some sort of guilt or something around the fact that Macaulay Culkin had so many problems with his parents, or that he felt so bad about that, or he felt responsible in a way?
Yeah, I think I guess Macaulay Culkin had some real shady parents, and I think they ripped him off too.
Mm-hmm. And
so I think what he was saying is that when he went to go cast for Harry Potter, he knew that this was going to be, it's like an 8-year commitment, because they're doing like 4 movies or something. So they had to cast very carefully, because these kids are going to be, for 8 years, you've got to have these kids who are going to be stable.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to go out and get hooked on drugs. Their parents are not going to be causing problems. And so that was the message I got from that, was that he was being very, very intentional about the casting.
Mm-hmm.
And, he seemed to care. He was like an example of someone who seemed to care and didn't want this to bring harm to these.
Yes.
Kids,
So one other thing that I guess I never quite saw this before, but absolutely right, which is this new level of, now kids want to see other kids in these shows. So now there's all these kids shows. Mm-hmm. And they also learn that kids like to see characters that are enjoying fame. And so this is when they started especially young girls, apparently, this is when they created the Hannah Montanas and, all of these characters that have, that have this. And also even not the wizard. Who's the other one? Is it Miranda Cosgrove? We saw a lot of that in the other one where they had that online with Jeanette McCurdy, whatever that show was. Right. They had like a special online show. So they were online famous. There was a lot of that kind of stuff.
And then there was the Ariana Grande show, the one she was on.
Where they're performing arts kids, right? They're at a performing arts high school or something. That was that first one.
I don't know. I have like flashes of these in my head. I don't know.
Because Max kind of got into Nickelodeon around the years of Sam and Cat. And
Sam and Cat was Ariana Grande.
Yeah, that was Ariana Grande. And
I think Jeanette
McCurdy? Yeah. But they were also, Jeanette McCurdy was in, I forgot the name. I think that's Miranda Cosgrove who was in that show. Yeah. But like, I do remember those people, but that's really interesting, because when you then make this character famous, then it was like, now you have all these additional branding opportunities. Right. And just the fact that the money that they were making. And so we see her interviewing JoJo Siwa.
Mm-hmm.
And
who was famous just as JoJo Siwa.
And again, she was someone I never followed. Like, I kind of sort of knew the name, but I didn't know who she was.
Yeah, she was on Dance Moms. Mm-hmm. She came from Dance Moms. She was a dancer on Dance Moms. And I don't know how she became so famous and popular. I'm not really sure. But talk about merchandising.
Oh my gosh. She had a whole room full of stuff of merchandise with her name attached to it.
Nickelodeon owned everything but her social media.
Mm.
So that's how she was able to basically say, well, F off.
Yeah.
Because she came out as being gay, and of course Nickelodeon was pissed.
Yeah.
And made her, I don't know, go around to all of the retailers and have to talk to them or something. I don't know.
And she said everyone started treating her differently. And then she was all over that Kids' Choice Awards, the Nickelodeon does. And then she got blackballed. And of course, they come back and say, oh, it's just an oversight. It's like, come on, if she's all over it and then the next year she's not there at all. Come on.
Yeah, she was like so famous. And but luckily she had that social media. She owned all that. And so that's how she kept going. And she just... kept it rolling. I think she's still doing okay.
Well, yes. And I don't know if I really approve of what she's doing now. Like, she says, I'm on Snapchat. I'm on Snapchat again.
Oh, yeah.
Layla tried to show me Snapchat once, and I was like, oh, no. I can't barely following you. So, and it's made, and they created Snapchat to be difficult for older people to get it, so your parents can't get on there. I get it.
We don't understand how to use it, so we can't find out what you're doing.
But she says that she posts 250 to 300 times a day. So every single thing she's doing, she is putting that on Snapchat. I'm kind of like, can we stop on this a little bit and say, is this really what's best for her? And is this the only way she can make a livelihood? Is having to post every last thing that she's doing. Like, I'm up now. Now I'm brushing my teeth. Now, I mean, can you imagine all day long, every single thing you're doing?
She's now like in her early 20s, right? I mean, how long can she, do the shtick? She's got to find something. I don't know what she's going to do. I mean, obviously the most brilliant transition from Disney star to stardom was Miley Cyrus.
Well, brilliant but come on, there were some rough years in between. We didn't know if Miley was going to make it.
What?
Are you kidding me? Miley Cyrus, her and Robin Thicke at the MTV Awards, her humping teddy bears.
But people loved it, Tess.
Well, hold on.
Didn't.
No. Not that people loved it, but it was talked about a lot. It was. We did not make it easy for Miley to explore herself and to figure some things out. And I'm all for Miley being able to do that. I'm all for her, like, wanting to break away from the Hannah Montana and try to figure out who she is as a human being and be out there. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm just saying, I don't think we made it easy for Miley. I think Miley got a lot of criticism, a tremendous amount of criticism. I remember her being criticized a lot.
By who, though?
By all the people that criticize, whether it's on social media or in gossip magazines.
Gossip magazines. People.
But what I'm saying to you is that it's got maybe her fans and maybe like people who loved her as Hannah Montana, maybe they were along for the ride and appreciated it. I'm just saying from my perspective, it really seemed like lots of people, there were a lot of articles being written, and this was this was a different time. And this was a lot of the Us magazine and all these magazines that were constantly printing about all these other, Lindsay Lohan and all these other women. And yeah, there was a lot of criticism of her.
But by a bunch of like uptight middle-aged people, because I'm sorry, her fans, which is all that matters, because these are the only people who pay to go see her in concert or buy her albums or do whatever. Her fans went right along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've been to a Miley Cyrus concert, the first concert that she did, her first album after she was no longer Hannah Montana. And it was off the hook. And I loved it and had a great time. And I was like, good for you. It was a little shocking because I sort of thought that this was Layla's first concert. I sort of thought it was going to be like a bunch of former, like Miley said, like younger kids. No, it was like women in their 30s,
mm-hmm.
Like having a great old time, just, I don't know. I think, and now look at her.
But I'm just, hey, anybody out there that wants to listen to me, because I'm telling you,
when have you seen a child star make that kind of a transition? And then now, like, she's on Beyonce's album. She's like the darling of, she's of rock and roll.
I am not at all saying that she does not deserve where she is, or that she is not incredibly talented, because she is. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the world was still critical of her.
Of course, they're critical of everybody.
And she was highly, highly criticized. I so distinctly remember, I can see it right now. It was when Robin Thicke had his one big hit, Blurred Lines, mm-hmm. and she sang Blurred Lines with him, and she was bending over, and, people, I mean, listen, people, I'm not saying that they were right. I'm just saying that there was a lot of media coverage of it.
True, but she kept her. But at the end of the day,
she's together. She's kept with it. Going. She's here.
She kept it going. She made it through.
She did.
Yeah.
And I think that this is another part of it too. Is that I think unfortunately there's a lot of child stars that were good enough to be a kid on a TV show, but weren't that good. Miley Cyrus can really sing, because mm-hmm. Miley Cyrus can really perform and mm-hmm. sing. She's got an incredible voice. And she does, she's an interesting person and an interesting singer, creative. Thank you. So yes, that will translate. Drew Barrymore, same thing. Christina Ricci. But I think that's the other unfortunate piece is that there's a lot of kids who, aren't very good, but kind of got the job because they were a kid or they were cute or the way in which they looked. And,
no, I agree.
And it doesn't translate. And those are the ones I feel really bad for.
Yeah.
Because
and not everyone can be Miley or
No.
Ariana Grande.
no. Oh no, that's another one. Ariana
Selena
Grande
Gomez,
is another one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
a lot of people
Selena
get
Gomez,
left in the
Jesus.
dust. I mean, I think they were focusing in this thing on some more successful people, but there's tons of these Disney people that are just,
Mhm.
that was it.
Yeah. But I thought this was a really interesting stat that apparently if you're famous, you on average live 14
Mhm.
years less
Mm-hmm.
because of the high rate of the mental health of how it takes a toll on people. You
Yeah.
have 4 times the likelihood of committing suicide,
Mm-hmm.
and because of all the addictive properties. And I think there's the addictive properties of fame and everything that
Mhm.
comes along with it. I also think that, quite frankly, I'm trying to think about some average Demi Lovato. If she's just going to high school, I don't think she has the same access to cocaine and heroin that she did when she was famous. Do you know what I mean? I think that you have
Right.
access. You're around a
you
lot
can
of
get
adults.
whatever you want. Yeah.
You can get whatever you want. So you have the access and people willing to give it to you. You don't have as many barriers to addiction. So I think that's the other part of it too. And people are, we all saw this. Bouncers are letting people into clubs. Like, we all saw young underage people. I mean, like, how did Drew Barrymore get into Studio 54?
Exactly.
I mean, she's not even middle school yet and she's going there. Like, how did they let her in?
I know. I thought it was bad when they were letting Brooke Shields in.
Yes.
Jesus. I mean, yeah, she's 10 years old. I know. And, so Demi Lovato, she had drug and alcohol problems, but then she was sober for 6 years. And in 2018, she relapsed and she overdosed, almost died.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of the overdose, she had strokes, she had a heart attack, she suffered brain damage, she has like permanent vision problems.
Wow.
And she says that her the relapse and overdose was due to her manager severely restricting her food intake. She was so miserable and depressed. She says, I'm 6 years sober and I'm miserable. I'm more miserable than when I was drinking. Why am I sober?
Mm.
And then she also talked about how she was raped by a co-star at Disney.
Wow.
And she told them about it and nothing was done about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, she's another friggin' miracle.
Mm-hmm.
And, and she is still, despite all of this shit, she's still a very, charitable person, very hardworking person, trying to make life better for other people. Like I said, she worked with Gavin Newsom on this bill that just became law January 1st in California, where it's similar to the Coogan type
Mm-hmm.
bill, but it's for you know how you have these families of these social media accounts and they're making money off their kids?
Because that's how they kind of talk at the end of the sort of things were broken up into sections, like the
Mm-hmm.
dream and then living the dream. And then what was the crash? And then the last one is a new path. And this is where we talk about this latest thing.
Right. So now if you have this social media account where you're using your kids and making money, you've got to take 15%
Mm-hmm. Good.
of what your kids are entitled to and put it into a Coogan type account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't know who this Ryan kid was that makes $50 billion. But this kid, Ryan, I didn't even know this YouTube channel of this kid who's like playing with toys. And he's being filmed constantly playing with toys.
Yeah, I saw that. Actually, I think this new child influencer law, I think it's more than 15%. It says online content of at least 30% of the content must... Okay, so if the child is in at least 30% of the online content, you must deposit 65%
Oh, good.
of the minor's gross earnings into a trust.
Ooh, this is good. That's good.
Yeah.
65%.
Wow. So now all these people are just going to have it be just 29%, so they don't get over that 30% threshold.
Mm.
But, I guess.
Well, but you can't get away with it if you're Ryan here. If you're playing with all the toys,
right.
You can't pretend like it's 29%.
Right.
So,
right.
But this is, and we're seeing this, and people are talking about this more and more. And now that there's more and more of these kinds of accounts happening in the world, yeah, and we talk about this too, because we talk about Sister Wives a lot. Sister Wives is another example of kids kind of not being paid and kind of like, now you got to go, now you got to do this. And also the other thing too is just how much you're revealing, because it's very different being an actor than, you actually having to show, like, you falling down, and embarrassing yourself in real life, or going through puberty, or whatever it is that's happening that's personal to you, breaking up with someone or whatever. It's very different when it's you versus a character on a TV show.
Yeah. And, Sister Wives and the Duggars and, all these family shows, they're really the most egregious, because especially when these kids are minors and this is the content of the show. And yeah, like, all the stuff and all the shenanigans and whatever the kids on Sister Wives went through were being filmed, and I'm sure they didn't feel like they could say no.
Yeah.
And they weren't getting paid for it, for their time. And it was their time. Like, filming a TV show, that's a lot of time, even if you're only in a small part of it. So yeah, that's really, really bad.
Well, this is good. So is this law only in California, or is it across the country, or they're trying to get it?
Okay, so my understanding is this is a California law, but how do you enforce this? Okay, so in terms of jurisdiction, so I guess it only applies to California residents?
Yeah, I would think so.
Even though it's on the internet and it's out there all over the whole world, I guess it would, it would just apply if you're a California resident and the activity is taking place in California, you're making the money, that's your principal place of business in California, you're filing taxes in California. So
yeah. And so listen, if California is the only one, maybe we'll see some of these people pick up and move to another state.
Yeah.
Because we heard this story from Kenan Thompson that he lost all his money because he was in Florida and they don't have the same laws.
Right.
And his mom met someone at church who was a good money manager, and basically the guy stole all his money.
Yeah.
Even Allison Stoner talked about that too, like having no money at the end because people were taking it.
Yeah, I know. It's only, they showed on a map like how many states. It's not
enough.
A handful of states. It's like 9 states or something like that. It's not enough. I mean, this is really quite an injustice. So, like, when you worked in LA, did you guys represent any child actors?
Yeah, I knew some of them, once in a blue moon. Usually the way they did it with agencies and stuff in the agent world, they kind of separate things. Like usually if you represent adults, you're representing adults, and then kids, I never really worked with any of those agencies that just had kids. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, but what a lot of what they were doing in LA at that time, because there were so many of these teen shows because of Buffy and, all of these shows, they were constantly, the whole thing there was always, they were always looking for 18-year-olds that looked like they were 14, 15.
Yeah.
Like young looking 18, 19-year-olds, because that is another reason they don't want to. A lot of times these shows would prefer to have all adults and to not have to deal with the how egregious it is. But even then, just like what I was saying about Carrie Russell, is she was 22, 23, something like that, and working, like falling asleep on the set, and then Disney would come around and she would ask for like a mango, and then they would bill her for it.
Oh, God.
I'm not even joking. I mean, it's a little bit like, are you kidding me? Like, because she got a special fruit, she's falling asleep on this. So there is that other piece too, where there's a lot of industries do this, but this Hollywood is one where they really do, they do it, and they're very manipulative about it. They never say to you, God, you're fat, lose weight. What they say is, gosh, I don't know if we have any of these outfits in your size. Let me see if there's any. Oh, so-and-so over there is a size 2 and you're a size 4. You know what I mean? It's a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of no one is ever coming out and saying it to you. It's always these very subtle things that then, the kid who's a constant sponge is trying to absorb.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Wait, so so-and-so's a size 2. So I will be easy and loved and liked and appreciated if I'm a size 2. Great. Now I know what to do. Now I'm a size 2. Okay. No, wait. Now I need to be a size 0. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of that
Yeah.
shit.
I have to say, I think I follow Britney Spears on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's tough.
And like her videos are all just kind of her dancing. I usually just scroll right on by.
Yeah.
But for some reason, there was a post that, the sound was on and it came up. And what made me stop and look at it was her voice. Like she talks in this baby voice, and she was talking about a cute little bottle of champagne and going on and on and on about how cute this little bottle of champagne was.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh God, did we make a mistake with the Britney thing?
No, because I think it's better. I mean, listen, I think I think she's in a safe space. Like, let's hope people are
like, is anybody helping her with her money? I
don't know. I don't know. Both her boys are now 18 and, yeah. I mean, you look at someone like her, she's a good example of, what happens.
How toxic. Yeah. This can go horribly, horribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And not because of anything she did, she was tortured and hounded by the press and taken advantage of by her family. And people and money are just...
Yeah. Well, and also if you spend, like what I was talking about, these like compartmentalizing, I'm here over here, I'm here this. And she had to go out, Britney Spears did, every night and perform in Vegas and pretend like life was great when she was really in this horrible conservatorship she was so miserable in. So talk about like compartmentalizing. So I think that it's almost interesting where it's almost like she got stuck somewhere of like, this is how I can be now. This is how I can survive is doing this. I don't know, but it's terrible. And at the same time, I mean, I think that not every child star has these kinds of stories, but we need to be more diligent, and we need to regulate a lot more. And definitely the internet is a place where it is just such a free for all. And I'm reading this book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And it's all about, how Gen Z's brain got rewired and reset based on the iPhones and social media and all this other kind of stuff. And the biggest thing that he talks about in the book is how when Gen Z, that sort of the birth of Gen Z and the internet and social media, I shouldn't say internet, social media, Gen Z, and that parents, and I'm one of those parents too, because we were all so freaked out about our kids getting kidnapped. We tended to be...
We forgot about this other stuff.
But what's happened is that we almost over-regulate kids in the real world and have no regulations in the virtual world. And that's really been
regulate very much.
And I didn't either. And again, Gen Z, I always say this to people because I talk about Gen Z a lot. They were the guinea pigs. Millennials were the first guinea pig of having an opinion about youth. They were that. Gen Z were the guinea pigs of social media, and there's all this evidence and research to back up all of his claims. He's absolutely right. But it's true because we were raised in this world of people getting kidnapped and no one really seemed to care. And, there was no trigger warnings. And so I think that, in cable news and just watching all the news cycle, that once we became parents, we became a bit overprotective because I think we felt like we weren't protected.
Right.
So we wanted to protect our kids. And then at the same time, there was this whole world of social media that we didn't know about. We didn't quite understand the impact of. There was no regulations. And that's unfortunately what's happened is it's rewired. It's rewiring kids. Kids are not the same.
Yeah, no, they're not at all.
And so that's why we need to embrace them and love them and be kind to them. And if they're at your company and working and you don't quite understand them, then this is why. And so you need to help them. That's what I talk about.
Hire Tess Brigham to come and speak at your organization and educate. Educate yourself.
Please.
Educate your workforce, because these kids aren't going anywhere and they're not kids anymore, and we're going to need them to take care of us. So
yes, they're the next generation. You can't. I love all these things of all these companies that are like, we're not going to hire any Gen Zers. I'm like, yeah, right,
yeah, right. That's
okay. That's not a solution, and you're the grown up. That's not a solution. So, hug your Gen Zer kid.
Yes.
Give them a big hug and kiss.
Let's try to save all the children.
Yes.
Child Star, very good.
Very, very good.
Check it out on Hulu. And we appreciate you listening. And we appreciate your support of the podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. And if you could give us a 5-star rating and or review, that would also really help to support the podcast. We have a Patreon if you want to get even more content. We do a weekly bonus episode, and then we have another tier where you can get the weekly bonus episodes plus the regular episodes ad-free, which is on the first tier also, both tiers. But then you also get once a month a true crime documentary episode, and then we do an Ask Us Anything episode, which we're about to record. We're a little bit late. I think this was supposed to be for December.
We're sorry. We've had a lot going on.
The holidays. Yeah, there's been a lot going on. So I'm going to blame it on the holidays.
Yes.
So we'd love to see you on Patreon. You can also find us on social media. It's like Legal Pop on Instagram and on TikTok as well. So thank you, and see you next time.
Bye.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellows wherever you get your podcasts.
Give me a mountain with lots to do. Give me the sunshine, give me a dew. Give me something simple and true. All I need is sunshine and a cool, refreshing Mountain Dew. So give me my good friends, give me a dew.
Grab some friends and an ice-cold Mountain Dew today.
Mountain Dew.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hi, I'm Pace Case.
And I'm Bachelor Clues.
We host Game of Roses, the world's best reality TV podcast. We're covering every show in reality TV at the highest level possible. We analyze The Bachelor, Love is Blind, Perfect Match, Vanderpump, and anything else you find yourself watching with wine and popcorn.
We break down errors, highlight plays, MVPs, and all the competitive elements that make reality TV a sport. And we interview superstar players like Bachelorette Caitlin Bristow and Big Brother champion Taylor Hale.
If you want to know so much about reality TV, you can turn any casual conversation into a PhD-level dissertation. You definitely want to check out Game of Roses.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.